everyone, and welcome to a special episode of our High Tech Women podcast, another installment of our High Tech Women panel discussions, where we dive into specifically some design tools. With me, as always, I have one of our co-panelists today, Ms. Grace Kennedy. How are you doing, Grace?
Hey, Katie, doing well. How are you?
Doing awesome. You're sporting a pretty cool Gilbane shirt today. Haven't seen that one before.
It is Friday. We are doing Hawaiian shirt Fridays. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. Repping the brand in a really cool Hawaiian way. Does everybody have the same blue Hawaiian shirt, or is it all different colors?
There were different options, but I went with the blue because that's one of my favorite colors. So.
Aw, I love it with the Gilbane logo. Looks very good. It makes it pop.
Thank you. Thank you.
Love it. Love it. And so today, Grace, we're coming out of our Symphony studio, and we have a great co-panelist with you today. We have photographer and drone operator at Above AZ and architectural associate at Presence Design, Amanda Oakes. How are you doing, Amanda?
Hi, it's great to be here.
Thanks so much for stopping by. We were just talking about you have a heck of a title, both of those together. I mean, just very powerful, very strong.
Nice. Yep.
I love it. I'm very busy, but I'm very creative and living the dream.
Love it. We love to hear that. So before we dive into our discussion today, which we're going to dive into a discussion on drones, which I'm super excited to learn more about, want to just give a little bit of a background on each of you. So Grace, as always, kick it off with that little Gilbane elevator pitch.
All right. Here we go.
Ready.
So I am a VDC engineer in Orlando, Florida for Gilbane Building Company. And as a VDC engineer, I digitally coordinate the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection systems within a project to minimize on-site issues. I also am a licensed drone pilot, hence bringing Amanda on here today and kind of talk through one of the many digital tools.
Yes, so excited, so excited. And Amanda, how about you? Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, about Above AZ and Presence Design?
No problem. I'm going to take a little bit longer than Grace.
That's fine.
I have practiced shortening that up. Don't worry.
Yes.
Honestly, at one point in time, I did so many things. I didn't even know how to summarize it, but here we go. I went to architecture school. And I always had an interest for art and photography and visual things. So during college, I fell in love with Photoshop. I started working at a photography museum, and I absolutely love my major and I love my job. Moving forward, I interned in a Vicon department at a company very similar to Gilbane, just a little bit smaller out here in Arizona. And that's when I got introduced to drones, and I was just so inspired. I thought they were just so amazing and different, but I also saw that they could be a great tool in the architecture and design industry. And that's when I bought my first drone and kind of created this idea that I would start a business using my drone to help my industry.
What was your first drone?
Oh my gosh.
I gotta ask.
So I was between getting the Phantom and the Spark because this was years ago. I ended up getting the Spark because it was slightly newer technology. And now when I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have just gotten the Mavic 1 because the Spark only shoots JPEG. So it's a little bit limited.
Did not know that. Okay.
But you know what? I learned a lot. I put a lot of miles on that little thing. And then I upgraded. So.
Nice.
And here you are, upgraded in drones, upgraded in job titles, just moving forward. Love it.
Moving on up.
Moving on up. So first question I have, just listening to both of you talk about how you got into this industry, is I didn't know that you could be a certified drone pilot, because that sounds pretty cool. So how do you go about getting a certification as a drone pilot? And are there different levels of certification based upon the profession that you're in? Like Grace is a VDC engineer and Amanda in architecture. So Grace, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, great question. So in order to get licensed, a certification, you have to go through the FAA, which is, I believe, the Federal Aviation Administration. Is that correct, Amanda? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so you got to go through the FAA and take a 60 question exam and pass it. And then, of course, do your own practicing of flying a drone. But essentially, within that exam, it prepares you to understand the airspaces and understand that you, the remote pilot in control, remote pilot, yeah, you are like in charge of your drone, and whatever happens when you take off, that's all on you. Whether or not, if you're closer to an airport, you have to be aware of that. There's different airspace regulations you need to be aware of, and having that licensure is fantastic to just be safe in the airspace.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And so is there specific then, you said it's that same exam then, so did you and Amanda both take the same exam? And now do you have to do different things to maintain that licensure within your industries?
So you need to take a recurrent test every 2 years. And very recently they came out with an alternative option, which is to just take like an online review lesson. And so we would all kind of take the same test with different questions. But if you want to say fly over people, fly at night, do certain things beyond the laws and regulations, you can actually get additional
waiver.
You can get additional waivers.
Yeah.
To do that.
Yeah, so there are restricted airspaces and airspaces with more regulations. And like Amanda said, if you want to fly in them, you have to submit a waiver to the FAA, and you have to get approval. And sometimes, depending on the severity of the flight or the rules that you would be quote unquote breaking, but again, you're getting authorization. It depends on how long it takes to get that back. So at the end of the day, it's just all about safety in the air, because you have a lot more obstructions than you think in the air, whether it's just regular airplanes, helicopter landing pads, recreational flyers, military drones, and or planes, etc. There's just a lot going on in the air, and you just want to make sure you're being as safe as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's something that truly never occurred to me, but it's an aircraft, right? So it's, even though you're flying it remotely, it's still going up in the air. And so that makes a lot of sense. So Amanda, I know you've already touched on a little bit the different types of drones that you started off with. And so now for both of you, as you've progressed in your careers, can you talk a little bit about the different drones that you have flown, and then to today, what you use in your specific jobs and what it requires? So Amanda, you want to start?
Okay, so I think the most fun I've had was being able to fly an Inspire. I didn't own it, but they run out about $15,000. And what you can do is you can change the camera and change the lenses on them. You can also like do different things where you move the camera independently from the drone, or you could have the camera locked on an object while you fly the drone around. So that's very fun, and that's also a DJI product. So it was very similar to flying my drone, which is the Pro 2.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Okay, Amanda, just a real quick question here: 15,000 or 1,500? I don't.
It really depends on the camera you have on it.
Okay. I don't know how much the Inspire goes for, so I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a range, it's tricky, but
Gotcha.
I'd say I know several people who have an Inspire 2, and those setups are anywhere from 12 to 20,000.
Oh, okay.
And you can
didn't know.
larger drones than that. I have not done that.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, on my end, so I got my drone pilot license about 2 years ago, and my first drone was a DJI Phantom 3, which is an old reliable. I still have it. Great drone. But now I have the same drone that Amanda currently has, which is DJI Mavic 2 Pro. Absolutely love that thing. Yep, it's small, handling great, flying quality, fantastic. Can't say enough about it. And so, Katie, for reference, DJI was named the top commercial drone maker. And I think I did some research here. According to like PC Magazine and TechRadar.com, many of DJI's drones are like considered the best commercial drones overall. They were in the top, like the Mini, Mavic, Air, etc. All those were listed at the top. So DJI is kind of the powerhouse of the commercial drones.
Wow. Just the big
Yeah,
ones.
you go to the website and it says like world's leading drone. Maybe.
Yep.
So then I don't know if you would know this, how many different drone manufacturers there are, and I guess the standard. So how has DJI set itself apart from the others? And I mean, do you both use DJI Go? Is that software? Do you use, both of you use that?
So good questions. As for how many other manufacturers, I don't know. I know drone technology is on the rise. So I'm assuming more will pop up. I couldn't tell you how many are out there right now. I just know DJI is the leading one. And then the other, so your drone, so DJI Go is a software that connects to your remote controller as well as your drone. And it helps you navigate and see what the drone is capturing in real time. Yeah, Amanda, sorry, unless you know more about other manufacturers, I'm not as familiar.
I mean, there's some that are catching up and gaining some traction, but think about it in terms of like the early iPhones, where it was like the iPhone was up here and then all these other smartphones were kind of like down here. Where like all these other brands are like catching up and doing what the iPhone can do, but right now DJI is like Apple, and the competition is getting up there, but it's just not quite there yet. As far as consumer drones go, like without getting into the heavy lift cinematic drones.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, because that makes sense to me, someone who has no knowledge of drones. So it's great for our listeners to have that better understanding. And so something too, as you guys were talking before, and you might have no stories about this, but the idea of flying an aircraft, right? So you're operating it, I guess, from the ground as it goes up, and then the hazards that could kind of transpired and you having to have those certifications and those waivers. Have you had any drone mishaps where you've hit something or something's hit you?
Well, go ahead, Amanda.
I just had one on Tuesday morning.
Wow.
I was flying for a landscape architect, getting images of project, and I had my drone pretty low. And I've only crashed my drone like twice. So like I like to pride myself in being very careful because this is my baby, but I swiped an outdoor light fixture and it actually cracked one of the propellers, but the drone stayed up and didn't crash.
Wow.
But I was on a university campus and the university kind of sent someone to supervise me. Like they sent someone from risk management to supervise me my whole flight. And I was like, okay, this is so annoying. Why is this guy watching me? And then when someone's watching me is like the one time something. And he was really chill about it when it happened. Like I did no damage. You know, the drone didn't even crash. So
then the drone kept flying even with a cracked propeller?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
I've accidentally flown my drone with cracked propellers in the past. So now it's something I always have to check for before I put it up. Because sometimes you just put it in the bag and take it out. And, you know, these things are pretty flimsy. So, just something to be careful of. I have spare propellers on me as well.
Yeah. Appreciate the visual. I'm glad you brought your drone. That's cool to talk to. And okay, so Katie, as a drone pilot, it's just par for the course. It's part of it. Just like any technology, there's going to be mishaps. There's going to be mistakes. Testing out new technology, it's all part of it. But at Gilbane, we have a growing drone program where we have non-negotiables. So before we fly, there are a bunch of different rules and regulations we have to go through and steps we have to go through in order to be as safe as possible. That means coordinating with our on-site project team members, understanding what the site logistics will be. Are there going to be cranes involved? If there are, how tall are they? Where are our laborers going to be? We need to make sure, we're not flying over anybody. Again, every single flight is different, and we just want to be as safe as possible. And we go through these non-negotiables every single time.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, right, that makes sense. And two, like with any technology, there's going to be missteps along the way. It's growing and you're learning about it too. And as you were talking, Grace, it made me think and Amanda, I want you to answer this question too, specifically with what you do, Grace, as a VDC engineer. Why has drone flying become something that has been brought up in your industry, and why is it now important and becoming this growing entity that's like a must now?
Good question. So as a VDC engineer, so we use drone technology and drone capture for a lot of different reasons on site. I would say the most popular deliverable that I create with the drone footage is an orthomosaic plan, which is basically a large, high-resolution aerial photo of our site. And the drone does that with an automated flight plan that it goes up and does a grid-like pattern and takes a bunch of photos at a strict same elevation. And then I go back in and process that and stitch it together so it does produce this very accurate high resolution aerial image. With that, we can overlay drawings from architects, engineers, and do quality checks, etc. Or we can just do those orthomosaic plans, that flight path on a regular basis, and see that construction progress. So that's huge. Also, the drone can take 3D point cloud data. That technology is still evolving. So accuracy wise, it wouldn't be as accurate as like a laser scan. However, we can produce 3D massing data from that. We can also take some volume information from it. Other than that, I guess documentations and photos of the site is always great for the project team as well as clients to have access to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's really cool. Go ahead, Amanda.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, Grace, does your company use Pix40 capture or drone deploy to do this?
So Gilbane, we are currently testing out different softwares. So we don't have one that we're sticking with currently. We do use Pix40, and we also are getting exposed to drone deploy. So we're still kind of trying to figure out which technology or which software is going to be best for us.
Oh, very nice.
So yeah.
That's cool. I've used both. I personally prefer drone deploy.
Good to know. Good to know.
And Amanda, what about you? So within both, I mean, with Presence Design and above AZ, with everything that you're doing, why has flying drones become something that's so prevalent in your industry?
I think as architects, we're visual people. So having the drone, being able to see these things at a different perspective is really helpful, both in the planning and design phase and during construction and after it's done. And this is actually kind of an obstacle in terms of selling my business, because yes, the drone is an amazing tool and it's so cool. But before drones existed, architects and contractors could do their job without it. So I'm essentially trying to sell a service that, like, yes, it's not 100% necessary, but it is really helpful and it can take your work to the next level.
I would argue that it is necessary now. maybe I'm just helping you sell it here, but I would argue that that footage, especially on a large site, it's so important. I mean, Katie, we were just talking about how pictures worth 1,000 words. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't get that footage with that perspective so high up and getting that large view without a drone. But okay, continue, Amanda. I am arguing that is a necessity now.
I love that. I say that now. I'm like, actually, it's necessary. Do you know how much information you're missing out on?
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially some of our sites that are just huge, and you cannot capture everything that you want to capture from being on site on the ground.
I agree. And actually, my client next week is a really small custom home. And, custom homes usually, like, sometimes they don't even use 3D, they just do it all in CAD. But this is such an interesting lot that we're going to use drone deployed to get like a point cloud / mesh cloud, and we're going to pull topo from it. So I think it's going to be an incredible tool for my client.
Wow.
Definitely.
Love it. Arguing for drones. And it does, I mean, a person who is an outsider, not knowing hardly anything about drones, understanding your industries, it sounds like it is a necessity now, Amanda. Grace is right. Sell it, do that hard sell.
Yes, I love that. And I think if we're going to put so much work into building these buildings, we need to document them correctly.
Yeah, show off the awesome work that you're doing. And check us out. Look at this stuff.
So now, of course, both of you are huge advocates of drone use. You use it every day. It's incredibly necessary. So now you both said that DJI Go is that kind of primary tool, that software. The manufacturer is really kind of the leading generator of those drones. Do you guys have any critiques of what you use? So the software or the drone type that you use? Grace, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So, Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, but so DJI Go does not have an automated flight path, like orthomosaic setting on it. At least I haven't used it. Do you know of like a pre-planned automated flight path that is capable for DJI Go?
You know what? It has the cinematic settings where you can plug it, but as far as mapping, no, it does not have that.
It's mapping. That was the term I was looking for, because it does have like waypoints and things you can set. You can set it to a certain elevation. It can go to those, or like you said, circle around a certain point, but it doesn't have the mapping. That is one thing that I think DJI Go really could benefit from, is adding that capability.
What about you, Amanda?
So I don't know how often you run into this in your corner of the country, but I have a lot of issues with unlocking my drone sometimes because, so if you're in a no-fly zone or a place where you need a waypoint, the drone will not take off. And even if you get that permission, you still have to go onto DJI's website and tell them you have permission, and then you have to turn on your drone and you have to download that permission to the drone before the drone will take off.
It's kind of a clunky process, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And I've had a few times where I typically will check AirMap or Kitty Hawk before I fly to make sure it's clear. And sometimes the boundaries of those no-fly zones on DJI Go are a little bit different than the boundaries the FAA supplies. So I will be like, oh, I'm fine to fly at this place. I go there and then the drone doesn't take off. And then I gotta bust out my laptop, get the permissions, unlock my drone, sometimes in front of a client. And so that is something that always stresses me out, that I think DJI could improve.
Right. That makes sense. And it also makes sense that there is some clunkiness or some discrepancies in those no-fly zones, because at the end of the day, Katie, so it's separated into quadrants on AirMap, where okay, in this quadrant you might have automated FAA airspace authorization at 100 feet or below, but within that quadrant, the restrictions where like an airport is circular, right? So it's circular. So half of this quadrant is in that, 100 feet or less, you're good to go. And the other quadrant is in a no-fly zone because, DJI, air map, etc. It is, I don't think things are exactly aligned, and it makes sense that it's not, and I don't really have a solution for it, but that is something I do think they could improve on. It's kind of just making that more strict and aligning with the FAA's information.
Yeah. So, and forgive my inability to, I don't fully know. So if this question is laughable, feel free to laugh. So if you're flying and you're in a fine zone that you can fly in, but then you cross into a no-fly zone, does your drone just stop operating, or does it continue to operate and you get flagged? How does that work? Or do you know?
I've never actually done that because as a Gilbane drone pilot, we have to do a lot of research beforehand and understand where we are flying, and I stick to those restrictions. I would hope it doesn't just stop operating. I doubt it. It might warn you. Amanda, has that happened to you?
Yeah, you know what? If you technically take out outside boundaries, you can go in. But the thing about these restricted zones is it's a height ceiling.
Yep.
So, you can technically go into that zone, but then once you hit that ceiling, you'll get warnings and the drone won't go higher.
Yeah.
But your drone's not going to fall out of the sky. It might refuse to move.
Okay. Yeah. So Katie, when you think about it, typically your restriction zones are airports, and airports, you think about the restrictive zones like an upside down cake because, planes will fly into it at a certain angle and fly out. So that's where these zones are an upside down cake. Oh. That's the best way I can describe it.
Okay, so there's like a large ceiling at 300 feet, and then the ceiling gets a little bit smaller and it drops down to 200 feet, and then it gets smaller until it reaches the ground.
Right. Depending on the size of the airport, yes.
Awesome. Yeah. That's a really cool visual to see how it kind of funnels down.
So I have this whole separate theory I could go into. So because drone technology is on the rise and more people are getting behind it and starting to fly, more than just regular civilians and consumers. I mean, I'm talking, Amazon, where we're thinking about using drones for different purposes, whether it's medical purposes or transportation, etc. And I think our current airspace will need to be updated because our current airspace structure is going to be overwhelmed with this population of aircrafts that they weren't expecting. Again, that's a whole separate topic, and I'm very excited to see where this goes, but I do have a feeling in the future our current airspace structure will have to be adjusted to take into account for this overpopulation.
Wow.
Yes, that is definitely in the works because they're making it easier to fly over people and to fly over roads, which will be interesting because as this is happening with these corporations using drones, we're also getting cheaper and cheaper drones, which means there'll be more people using it professionally, but also more amateurs. And just like when the Phantom series first came out, when there's a big influx of amateur drone owners, there's a lot of negligence for the laws, and there happens to be a lot of accidents, and then the laws become more restrictive. So we're kind of at a push and pull point here where it's companies are trying to make it less restrictive, but consumers are going way up. So there's a safety concern.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That makes sense. I didn't think about that because I guess you guys are constantly then, or as it grows in that kind of battle zone where it's a necessity for your work and you are so diligent in following the rules and restrictions. But as regular people like me, I could go buy a drone and I don't know, my knowledge is limited. So is there any limitations to if I wanted to go buy a drone, do I have to prove that I've taken the test, or how does that work? So I guess that makes sense, trying to find that balance, as both of you guys are saying.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, the FAA is in control of the airspace, right? They are regulating our airspaces. So if you are putting something in the air, you should be notifying the FAA. You should be licensed. You should know what your, it's more of a safety. Coming from Gilbane, and we just really pride ourselves on safety, and it is so important to us. It is one of our core values. I mean, we really strive to be as safe as possible, especially with drone pilots, this new technology. So as for Amanda, I'm not really sure when it comes to just regular consumers getting drones, but I think everybody who has a drone should be licensed and should know what's happening in the air.
Okay, I agree with you, but this is kind of how it is. If you have a drone, so if you're licensed, you're technically a commercial pilot. If you're not licensed, you are a recreational pilot and you shouldn't be making money off of it. So recreational pilots are still supposed to follow the rules, but there is no test. So a lot of these people, like, you can just, go to Best Buy and buy a drone and start flying it right out of the box. But you're not, there's technically laws, but you might not know about them. So that's kind of where there is some trouble. And you're supposed to technically register your drone with the FAA, but there's a lot of drones that are not registered. And now with the new Mavic Air and Mavic Air 2, they actually weigh under 250 grams. So very small, very light plastic. And so they weigh so little, you don't need to register them. So those drones are just completely off the radar.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's on the rise.
Yeah. Wow. I would say fortunately, it's just things will need to change, and currently those are the rules, and currently those drones that are under 250 what was the unit you used, Amanda? I should know this. I thought it was under like half a pound or something, but we could look this up.
American here, we don't.
Yeah. Don't quote me on this, but there's a certain weight restriction where you it does not have to be registered. However,
okay.
Everything needs to be registered. That's
yes.
where I'm going with this.
Yes, I recommend following all the rules. For drones, make drones more accessible to people, especially children, which is great for the future of technology, but unfortunately it does leave a lot of room for reckless behavior, which does ruin the fun for the rest of us.
Gotcha. So then do you have, I guess, both of you being in the field for however long it's been available and seeing now this growth, and Amanda, like you're saying, how important it is for kids to see the use of drones and how possible it is to enter into this field. But at the same time, you're both in that battle of, well, we work in this industry. And so we want to make sure that nothing happens to really restrict you more so that it inhibits your job or your ability to complete it. So have you, either of you, thought about then a best practice or something that you might do, or I don't know, how you hope the industry kind of evolves so that this is managed in a way that benefits both sides? And if you haven't, it's okay. I wanted to throw it out there.
No, good question. Amanda, you can take lead on this if you'd like. I'm still thinking over here.
Oh yeah. I think that if you get a drone and you start researching how to fly it and what to do, you eventually get to those online resources that will, tell you the laws and restrictions. But maybe if the drones themselves came with some information in the box, or maybe within the DJI Go app, if it could kind of tell you the laws and keep you from flying certain places, which it is upgrading to do. I think those could help keep us all a bit safer.
Yeah, absolutely. Grace, you got anything?
No, I'm gonna do no comment on this one.
I mean, it's what Amanda's saying, and Grace, I think what you've touched on too is that it seems that the gap could be at least bridged with education, right? So educating the consumers who are starting to buy these drones and wanting to learn more. And, you know, a really cool way to educate people is through podcasting like this.
My gosh, you are so right. You are so right.
Like conversations with incredible women like yourselves who know so much about drones. And so now people can tune in, especially young people, to learn more about them. Well, ladies, this was a great conversation. Do you, either of you, have any closing comments or thoughts about drones? DJ Igo, anything you want to say to wrap?
Be safe with your drone flying. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to connect on drones or anything, honestly, technology related.
Amanda, you got anything to wrap?
Yes, I agree. Be safe and make sure to do your pre-flight checklist and to check your maps before you go.
Love
craft propellers.
Yes. Good advice. Good advice. All right. So as we close, I want to, Amanda and Grace, give everybody some information so they can reach out to you and ask questions if they need to. So Grace, if someone wanted to get in touch with you and learn more about Gilbane, where might they do that?
So Gilbane is on all of the social media platforms. I myself, you can connect with me through LinkedIn or email me at gkennedy1@gilbaneco.com. Always happy to connect about anything drone related, technology related, like I said before. Thanks, Katie.
Yeah. And Amanda, what about you? If someone wanted to learn more, get in touch with you, learn about Presence Design or Above AZ.
Yes. Okay. So real quick, I'm also part of an organization called Women Who Drone, and we do a lot of outreach and education. So anyone, women or not, can reach out to Women Who Drone. It's a great resource. It's a great community. We have a Facebook group that's open to anybody who wants to join. So for myself, I have my Instagram, which is above_AZ. My website is aboveaz.world, not .com, .world. And my email is aboveaz.marketing@gmail.com. And my architectural firm is presencedesignpllc.com.
Awesome. Well, ladies, thank you both so much. And that's really cool, Amanda, learning about Women Who Drone. Grace is definitely joining Women Who Drone.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. I was like,
love it.
Looking it up right now.
Love it. Love
awesome.
it. Well, ladies, thank you so much. And thank you all so much for tuning in and learning more about drones on our special high-tech women panel. I'm Katie, we got Grace and Amanda. If you want to learn more about Symphony Technology Solutions and or if you want to be a high-tech woman featured on our panel, you can reach out to us. We are on LinkedIn at Symphony Technology Solutions, or you can go to symphonyts.com. Thanks, ladies.